Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Belle. I'm the head of demand generation at Binalyze, and I will be your host today. We're excited to introduce Magellan, Binalyze's latest innovation designed to bring investigation e-discovery directly into the SOC. Unlike traditional approaches that rely on metadata, Magellan enables analysts to search inside files across endpoints in real time, unveiling what data is actually involved, where it resides, and who has access to it. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. First of all, this webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing a copy with you after today's section. Second, we welcome and encourage your participation. So if you have any questions or there is anything that you would like to share with us, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A box or the chat box. We'll try our best to answer all of your questions by the end of the presentation. Lastly, if you would like to talk to our team, please feel free to email us at contact@binalyze.com. Without further ado, let me introduce our speaker today, Lee and Rifat. Lee, who is our chief investigator at Binalyze, he is a very seasoned investigator with deep experience in incident response and cyber investigation. He leads Binalyze investigative research and works very closely with security teams to improve how investigate and understanding cybersecurity incidents. And Rifat, who is our senior software engineer at Binalyze, with more than 15 years of experience in software engineering and digital transformation. He specializes in building scalable systems and driving innovation across full stack and cloud technologies. Both of them today will guide you through the innovation behind Magellan. So over to you, Lee and Rifat.
Awesome, thank you, Belle. The big question, which data is at risk, or what data is at risk? Earlier this year, we conducted some research and some interviews with some of our existing customers, some prospective customers, and security leaders in the community at large. And one of the things we took away from that is about 3/4 of them were missing key information after a breach or after a security scare. The hardest question of the information that they didn't have, the hardest question that they stated was identifying at-risk data. Whether that was from a proactive perspective or even from a reactive perspective, they didn't know which sensitive data existed in their environment and which systems that data existed on, or that sensitive data existed on. The reason for this is that there's a content blind spot with a lot of security tools out there. So not picking on anybody, but if there's a EDR or a SIEM or even SOAR, you're going to see things like file names, file paths, potentially hashes, and you might get an owner of that file, but you're not going to have the contents. So we're left to make assumptions when something says like payment card information or payroll.exe or payroll.excel file or whatever. We can assume that there might be sensitive information in there, but we don't know for sure. So it makes the investigation process take a few more steps. We've normally got to do some collection, things along those lines. Traditionally, the way that we solve that, once we have suspicion that sensitive data may exist, it's either through an e-discovery process with a legal tool or through traditional forensics or a combination of the two. Now, the challenge with e-discovery during incident response or even an insider threat scenario is investigations with those tools. The tools themselves are often owned by the legal team, which means the incident responders or the security teams, they don't always have access. That can lead to a more onerous and, I guess, clunky investigation as we try to coordinate with teams operating at different speeds and with different levels of scrutiny. From a technical perspective, e-discovery platforms aren't great at surfacing the artifacts needed to understand how an attacker may have gotten in or who was in control of a user account. So that e-discovery tool, for example, will be good at saying that Lee at binalyze.com was the owner of some file that had sensitive data in it, but it might not be so good at determining whether me as the user created that file or if someone had, it's the Trojan defense question, if somebody else had control of my account at the time that file was created. So we normally solve that question with traditional forensics, where we'll pull full disk images that include all the exculpatory evidence, things along those lines. That's also an onerous process with indexing, some ETL, extract, transform, or load, or in simpler terms, evidence transmission pipelines, whether that be digital or physical. So as we started talking about this concept internally, my peers, the other subject matter experts, investigators here at Binalyze had some questions. Do we index it or not? Traditionally, this is something that you would do with an indexing platform. The challenge with that, though, is the evidence transfer pipeline that we were just talking about. You have an endpoint that's in question. You believe that sensitive data exists on it. Now I have to get all of the data off of that platform one way or another, whether that's a lot of files or whether that's a full disk image. I have to transmit that to a central server. I mean, even the explanation is lengthy. And for any of us who've been doing this for a long time, we can remember back to the old days of full disk image processing. And if I've got 10 or 20 systems in question, I might be waiting a week or 2 weeks for the indexing to occur and for those disk images to get parsed. And that just did not meet our requirements. So we want to be able to search across hundreds or thousands of systems, which we have tested, and be able to expand into tens of thousands of systems or more, which we're capable of. And if we're going to do it that way, indexing just doesn't make sense. Even if we were to put that into an auto-scaling solution into the cloud, that's possible and feasible. It's just very expensive. So instead, we decided to opt for processing keywords on the edge. Take this number here with a grain of salt. This was the number that we got back from our research earlier this year. I believe we have selection bias on the types of organizations that we queried, but the number that we came back with was north of $100,000 per hour of investigation. Now imagine I've got 100 systems to query. 20 systems is going to take me a week or two to process, index, transfer, etc. It's just not feasible. So this is where Magellan comes in, and where some of the folks on our engineering side, Rafat in particular, developed this tool called Magellan. Now, internally, Magellan is our code name, and I'm going to pop over to the platform for just a second. In the platform, we're calling this full text search. So full text search is Magellan. And what that does is we built Magellan with incident responders and SOC analysts in mind. And it's the first real e-discovery style workflow for a SOC analyst or for an incident responder. Now, keep in mind, it's not a full e-discovery platform like some of the other folks out there. This helps us answer where does sensitive data exist, or where I can search the contents of file and identify keywords anywhere in my environment. And that analysis happens at the edge. We'll show this in the demo a little bit later. But in our in the cases that we're working and the customers that are using this, they're getting answers back on hundreds or thousands of endpoints inside half an hour, it blows my mind. We have a really great engineering team here, and we've really put a lot of effort into making these workflows more effective and faster. The last thing that I'll say is, at least on this part, is we're basing our observations on evidence, not assumptions. So again, this is not, we're not reading file names and saying, I think payment card information exists in there. We're actually looking at the contents. And of course, there may be some privacy concerns there in some situations. But anytime we're doing an insider threat investigation, an incident response investigation, or compliance assessments to determine where sensitive data exists, we either have permission or consent to enter those systems, and the same is true for our customers. Now, what that full text search looks like, we're calling this a hybrid search or a hybrid estate search, and that allows us to see to interrogate systems that are in the cloud. So this is going to be your EC2 or your cloud compute, whether that's AWS, Google, or Azure. Also, we have coverage on your on-prem systems, so your workstations and servers in your office, and if you're a return to office organization. And the same thing is true as long as AIR is installed. We support the BYOB organizations as well as folks that are work from home. The types of things that we're searching are, of course, keywords. That's table stakes, phrases, patterns, and regexes. So these are all things that can be uploaded into AIR and searched across the fleet, with that processing happening on the edge. And then I'll say it again, that we're confirming the presence of that sensitive data without having to pull a disk image or a ton of files across the wire. So this is much more scalable than most of the existing solutions out there. And some of our customers are pointing out that it makes it more feasible I'll talk about some experimentation we're doing now or in a second. But it makes it much more feasible for our customers to do role mismatching inside the SOC. So without having to involve other teams or go back and have a more onerous or disjointed investigation, customers are now able to understand which asset is at risk, or which asset contains data that could be at risk, which owners, who owns those particular files, and of course the nature of that particular user. So there's a couple of ways that we're looking at this, or a couple of things we're experimenting with. Number one, we have an existing auto tag feature. So we're experimenting and doing some research internally to determine if we can auto tag things like, if they're running finance software, this is probably a finance team member. If they have GitHub installed, then this is probably going to be engineering. It's getting a little bit blurry with AI, so we're doing our due diligence on that piece. And the second thing is we're working with some of our customers to integrate with their directory services or configuration management databases, so that they can more clearly draw a ring around any role mismatches and authorized access. And because we're doing this processing on the edge and it's relatively inexpensive to conduct these queries across large numbers of systems, insider threat identification and hunting becomes a proactive workflow instead of just a reactive workflow. At least in my experience, when doing this sort of at-risk data assessment or insider threat hunting, there's normally a trigger ahead of time. So I normally have an alert, somebody's worried about something, there's a third-party notification that some data is at risk or has been exposed. Now, because it's so relatively easy and inexpensive, both from a compute, a time perspective, a resource consumption perspective, it's just inexpensive to conduct these investigations. So you can do multiple assessments, full text searches a day, without bogging down the system and without disrupting users. Of course, the thing that came up time and time again with our internal security teams, our CISOs, is that they're very worried about their 72-hour reporting requirements, and this is true for the compliance schemes across the globe. Well, the reporting, the time frames change, but the concern is still there with our CISOs from around the globe. And again, this allows two things. We can start helping our customers meet those reporting requirements. And having been a payment card forensic investigator back in the day, I'm familiar with that, I can now very easily see if there is any payment card data or whatever other sensitive data outside of that specified environment. So we used to go to link, and we still do, or our customers do, the security industry goes to links to segregate the PCI environment. And it's just as important to identify any leakage of that data into the non-PCI environment. One, you want to find that before an auditor does, and that's going to save you some time and some money. And you definitely want to find that before an adversary does, because that's going to save you time, money, a bunch of explanation, some headaches, and so on. But it's important to note that Magellan is not a silver bullet. This is not a Swiss Army knife. This is intended for a specific use, and we are not a legal hold archive. Our Magellan is not a legal hold archive. We do support evidence repositories. So if this is something you need for a legal hold, you simply export it to an evidence repository like any other insider threat case that we already support. It's not, while we can conduct or collect disk images, Magellan itself is not, it's not a slow imaging process. This is at speed. We're able to query things and do that processing on the edge. It's not a governance platform. So this isn't like the CISO checklist platform where you're checking off compliance things and then providing screenshots of evidence. We are querying the direct evidence to determine if at data exists where it should or where it should not. We can also do some negative searches. If you have some questions around that, I think Rafat can answer that during the Q&A at the end. We're also not an AI chatbot, but I will say we are changing the industry with Fleet AI. It's not a chatbot either. It's a little bit outside the scope of the conversation for today, but definitely be on the lookout for our upcoming Fleet webinar. Maybe we'll even have some workflows on how to access and execute workflows with Magellan via Fleet. It is in the past month, I have completely re-examined the way that I look at digital forensics and incident response workflows. Part of that is Fleet. A huge piece of that is Fleet, and part of it is now I can do full text searching across 10,000 systems, and I don't have to think about it. And it's so simple. In fact, I really do believe we're empowering tier 1 or L1 and L2 analysts with Magellan in particular, and Fleet, which we'll talk about in a later webinar. Now, historically, if I'm going to do this at-risk data analysis, normally that's going to be in combination with a breach coach or some third-party counsel or internal counsel, et cetera. And I normally rely on a senior person for that, the L3 or L4 or whatever you want to call it, someone with 5, 10, 20 years of experience. And that's because I need that person to understand evidence acquisition, chain of custody, evidence handling, the transmission. There's like some security engineering components of moving a disk image from one place to another, whether that's over the wire or encrypting it and shipping it via USPS or just driving it in your own personal vehicle. It's a lot of effort to pull that disk image back in a timely fashion. Now we don't have to worry about any of that. L1 and L2 analysts also don't need to know regex. We can set it once and forget it. We're going to be shipping some regular expressions for common formats along with Magellan right after release. It's very powerful, and we'll just go ahead and jump straight into a demo. Now, again, remember that Magellan is called full text search. Magellan's our internal code name, engineering code name, and in the platform, it's called full text search. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to create a new case. I'm going to use the case naming schema that we use internally on our cert team. Matter of fact, I'm just going to keep it quick there. I would normally add a descriptor. And now I simply want to start a full text search. It's very, very quick and easy to do. In this environment, we have 8 hosts or 8 assets. And I'm going to go through, this is the full text search thing. It looks very similar to, or the interface, it looks very similar to a hunt or to an acquisition. I've already got the case selected. And you'll see that I have some pre-programmed profiles in here. And we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at this credit card pattern. So one, I've created regular expressions for each of the 4 card brands plus JCB. If I were to open this up and look at the regexes, this is what those regexes look like. And if there were a pattern to match, this is what that looks like. So this is the regular expression for Visa. You'll see that it matches this simulated. This is all simulated data. You'll see that it matches this track 1 data here, and it also matches the PAN. Again, I was a payment card forensic investigator for quite a while, so this is the at-risk data that I have spent the most time investigating. But jumping back to the platform, I have this profile configured to select to scour every type of file format that we support. So you'll see there'll be common Windows files. We're experimenting with access to databases, especially like SQLite and easy stuff like that. Of course, plain text is on the docket. Things like bash history and shell history are relevant to us because we also have the ability to search for API keys, and they often pop up in shell history on Linux and Mac systems. And then, of course, there's a lot of text processing and user-created files that we currently support. This list of supported files will continue to grow. And I'm very hopeful, although I'm not speaking for engineering, I'm very hopeful that at some point we find a way to query databases directly. I'm going to go ahead and cancel any updates to this because I'm not sure what I just changed, and we'll trigger that full text search. I'm going to use my default policies. I know those are configured correctly, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on View Task. And I will sit here for just a second. It might be just a minute or so of awkward silence, but this process happens quite quickly. The other thing that I'll point out is our Air instance here is hosted in AWS. I believe this. I'm not sure. I don't recall exactly which region it is, and the environment where our cyber range, this ransomware environment, is not hosted. I believe it's actually Hostinger. So they're not the same. This is not like it's not fast because it's in the same exact VPC or anything like that. They're totally separate. The regions are in different parts of the world. It's just fast. So you'll see if I were to wait maybe 3 or 4 minutes, you'll see how fast this acquisition happens. And in fact, I'll go ahead and cheat and I'll tell you that Domain Controller 1 is the system that has the questionable records on it. I have another case. I have another case open for the sake of this demo to show you what that looks like. And we'll be able to see here that Domain Controller 1 does have regular expressions that match in this case, it's track one data, and we can see exactly which user, or in this case, it's in a user directory, so we can see exactly what that file path is and infer which user owns that file. So it's quite powerful, and hopefully my interact session is still live. I'm going to go ahead and type a help command, and because I can see which file that is, I'm just going to navigate to that file. I can simply navigate to, I'm going to list the users here. I'm going to navigate to the appropriate user and their desktop. And then I'm going to get that file. And it's really quite that simple. Of course, if I were to download that file, I can also cat that file. And I can get an idea of what's in there. And anybody who has investigated credit card dumping malware over the years will see this is pipe delimited is a fairly common format for malware dump files. Generally, what will happen is a piece of credit card capturing malware will read memory, and then it writes it to a file in a format similar to this. I've investigated dozens and dozens of these. But that's us for the demo. And that was nice and quick. And let's see if we have any questions or if there's any other topics the audience would like us to cover. And I'll pop back over here.
Thanks, Lee. So it's the time for Q&A. If you have any questions, just don't feel shy, and then just put it in the chat box, and then we'll try our best to answer.
Excellent. And keep in mind that we have the brainchild behind this, Rafat, on the line with us. So he is happy to answer. The more technical the question, the better. One of the two of us should be able to answer.
Right.
Sure.
Okay, let's jump to the first one. We got, what kinds of sensitive data can Magellan actually detect on endpoints?
I think as long as you can write a pattern or a regular expression for it, we can detect it. I don't think there's any limits. The limitations, if there are any limitations, it'll be if something is encrypted or encoded, or the particular file formats that we support.
Okay, and then speaking of like file types, there's like a question also asking what file types and data source are being supported.
Great question. We can, I believe the list for those is in, I'm looking for that answer now on the platform. I believe the list of that is going to be in our knowledge base. We can certainly provide that list via email after this. If anyone has any questions, I'm sure there's going to be a follow-up email. We can add it there.
Also, we are planning to expand these search files. Currently, we focused on first the text-based files, but it's going to be extended much more different file types, and much more files are coming up in the future.
Okay, and then let's see. There is another question asking, does Magellan require data to be centralized or copy off the endpoint to search it?
No. In fact, that's the point. And this is the thing. I had some cognitive dissonance on that too. We're doing the searching on the edge. So we don't have to pull. So you see here, we have all of these WordPerfect and Microsoft files. We don't have to pull those back to the server. So in a situation where maybe your console is in the United States and the target system is in Germany, the source data never leaves the endpoint. So this helps us circumvent some data residency issues and things along those lines. And in some situations, of course, we're not attorneys or regulators, so you're going to want to check with your legal teams on that. But no, the data does not come across the wire. We're doing the searching on the endpoint.
Okay. And then just you talk about different locations. There's a question asking, can Magellan search across both workstation and servers at scale?
Yes. We've done it across thousands of systems, and those returns came back, and like 100% of those returns came back, well, for the online systems within 30 minutes. I feel fairly confident that we can scale to tens of thousands of endpoints. We just haven't had a use case. At least me personally, I haven't been involved in a use case for that yet.
Okay. Let's see.
I will say scalability. So we have some auto scaling capability in our SaaS environment that may not be true for all on-premise environments. So the scaling of this depends some on your specific deployment, but from a SaaS perspective, we haven't even come close to the limits yet.
Okay. We hope that Lee's answer is perfect for that question. Let's see. We have another one asking, can Magellan help determine whether sensitive data was being moved to an unauthorized location?
We can help. So AIR as a whole can help you determine if that happened. Magellan can help determine if it exists in an unauthorized location. Now, of course, this is going to whether whether a location is authorized or unauthorized also requires some business context. So those are things where you're going to have to talk with your legal team or business unit leaders or the user themselves. But yes, we can help identify where it exists. We can use the other artifacts within AIR to determine how it moved from one place to another, and help get to the bottom of that question.
Okay. A question about deployment. How quickly can the team run an investigation once Magellan is being deployed in their environment?
Rafat, you want to answer that question?
Well, actually, it depends on the very different parameters, but for a normal search, you will receive information in minutes, because we have some currently, because of our user needs things, we decided limiting some file size and also file types, and also search for file limitations. Those kind of limitations actually makes our qualified information to be provided to users in a very fast way. But of course, these limitations can be extended. Once you extend these limitations, the searches will take time. But as you'll see inside the demonstration, once you do it, it will take minutes to achieve valuable information for you.
All right. Okay, there's one about compliance. Is Magellan useful for compliance or audit workflow, as well as in incident response?
The number of compliance assessments I've done compared to insider threat assessments is like 10 to 1, just because I did so much payment card work. So absolutely. I was a payment card auditor, PCI auditor, and an investigator. So I would think both in proactive workflows, understanding where that sensitive data exists ahead of an audit really is very helpful. And there's always a delta or a difference between where you want your sensitive data to exist and then where it exists in the real world. And having been a very difficult auditor, I took it very seriously because I was normally auditing post-breach. We would be very pedantic about making sure that data only resided inside the secured area. So yes, it's helpful in both proactive and reactive compliance workflows.
Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in. Is there anything that Rifat and Lee that you would like to share before we close out our section today? All good?
I think I'm good from my side. As always, I like to thank the audience myself. Thank you for your time today, and hopefully this was useful. And please provide any feedback, and Belle will have those details here in just 1 second.
Yes. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. We really hope that you find the section interesting and insightful. So as a quick follow-up, that we will be sharing the recording as promised, and then also with some additional resources. Please visit binalyze.com to learn more about Magellan, and there is also an interactive demo video over there for you as well. If you would like to stay in touch with us, please stay connected on our social media channels. We thank you for spending your time with us today. Have a great one, and then we look forward to seeing you in the next section. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you.